Now, assuming that, we've already understood the silent and said rules of the session, I will start with discussion on the introduction on nature of economics. Okay. Now, let me put it in a very simple manner. Now, we have been, growing up, learning about economics, reading about economics, so many things we've been seeing around us. We see budgets every year, we see every country talking about their economics, we see so much of, economics around us. And every time we hear or every time we encounter these things, it, brings a question to our mind that why or what exactly is so intriguing about the concept of economics that, keeps us all uh, engaged and is of interest to everybody, despite the fact that somebody might, possess a lot of wealth or not, but still the concept or the nature of economics is of interest to each and every individual, right? Now, I'll give you a very simple example to, highlight what I want to say over here is I'm sure, as growing up, as kids while growing up, we must have, had opportunities where somebody might have come to us and given us some money. Now, every time some money was given to us, it would, raise a question in our mind. What am I supposed to do with this money? Even a child thinks that way, that okay, so and so uncle or so and so relative or so and so friend came and visited me, and they've given me this money. Now, as a child, I'm sure most of us were taught by our families, by our parents, that save some part of it, put it in your piggy bank, right? Now, the moment you want to make a decision on how much of the money should you put in your piggy bank and how much of it can you actually spend, was where you were actually thinking from the economic concept. You got economic over there, right? Because you were faced with a choice. And the choice was in the face of scarcity. So if you save everything, you may not be able to buy what you wanted to buy at that point. If you spent all the money on buying what you wanted to buy, maybe you could not have saved anything, right? So just understand, even as a kid, even though we were not aware of these concepts, even though we were not, taking into account how these concepts worked in the economy or how these concepts actually inclinated or joined together, but we were still making decisions. And that is the beauty of economics, right? It helps you, or it gives you, an opportunity or an idea or a concept for you to think and make decisions, right? So when I talk about economics, right, why I took this example, I'm sure most of you might be aware of much better or much broader concepts in economics, but it is very important to understand that where did this economic context or where this economic concept creeped into our lives. So it creeped into our lives even though we were small kids and we were not aware of something like economics, but it was still working in the back of our mind when we were making decisions in the face of scarcity, right? I will talk about this in more depth in the second part of the session, that is tomorrow. Today, let me talk very basic things about economics, because these are the underlying concepts that will help you in building your, overall conceptualization of what economics is. So now, economics is something which is considered as both a science as well as an arts, right? Now, I am sure, growing up, when you have learned, or you have, I would rather say a lot of us have muggled up a lot of definitions. And those definitions were based around a process and a concept and something like this, something like that, right? Similarly, in that sense, if I put up economics, economics is something which is considered both as an art as well as a science, right? Now, the science and art concept go hand in hand, they go together with each other to bring to the fore what we see economics today. Now, let us break the concept of economics as science. Now, when I say economics as science, right, I'm talking about two things: something which is a positive science and something which is a normative science, right? Now, a positive and a normative science. Again, obviously, it may raise a question: what is a positive science and what is a normative science? You need not be worried at this stage. I will break it up for you. Okay. But in the meanwhile, if there are questions in your mind with, something that deals with the two slides that I've just taught, taught you, please feel free to type it in the chat so that, you have an opportunity to ask that question in the end, and you don't lose a track of what your question was. All right. Okay. Now, when I'm talking about, economics as a science, or economics as a normative science, or economics, as a positive science, what exactly am I meaning to say when I say science? Now, science implies, in the nature and scope of economics, it implies the following things. The first is there is a systematic body of knowledge, right? Obviously, when we talk about economics, we know obviously, growing up, we have seen so many things connected to economics, so many, people talking about money, people talking about wealth, people talking about, planning, people talking about allocation, production, selling, demand, supply, etc. So many things, right? And you've been hearing these things all around you. You've been hearing economies of the world, right? We've been hearing so many economies of the world talk about money, talk about trade, talk about exchanges, talk about their, currencies, and so on and on and on. But, these are very, very broad things. The underlying concept lies in how science is something that is intricate to the study of economics. Because we say that economics is a very systematic body of knowledge that will trace the relationship, right? Now, what is the relationship that economics is trying to trace here? The relationship that economics is trying to trace over here is between the cause and effect, right? So if I'm sure you must be reading newspaper and you may be seeing that, the GDP of our country is falling down. Maybe the inflation rate is going up. There is so much of inflation in XYZ country. This country is facing a shortage of some resources, etc. Now, when we read about these things, there is something that is causing that, right? And when we say it is related to economics, economics is actually that study that will help you trace the relationship between this cause and effect. So something is happening, right? And why is it happening? The cause is related somewhere. So if the economy is facing a recession, or if there is high inflation in an economy, if the GDP is falling down, what is the cause? This is an effect, right, of a cause. Now, that cause is something that traces itself to the study of economics, right? The second is we have observation of certain facts, systematic collection, and classification and analysis of these facts, right? So, when we talk about economics, it is also about observing certain facts. Now, I am sure, again, like I said, you are reading about so many things in economics. You are hearing so many things in news channels. There are certain facts, right? I'm so sorry. For example, if I say that the economy of some country is down, or economy of some country is up, etc., that man in that sense, you know there are certain facts that have caused or led to that thing to happen. Cause, effect, and facts. Facts which are linked, interlinked, and they're systematically collected, classified, and they're analyzed to understand. So you would see trends based on the trend of 5 years, or based on the coal prices, oil prices, fuel prices of 5 years, we make certain predictions, right? We make these predictions based upon certain facts, certain systematic collection and classification and analysis of these facts. And this is something that has to happen in a very systematic manner. And that is why we say that economics somewhere is a scientific study, right? Then the third is making generalization on the basis of relevant facts and formulating law theory, thereby after following certain assumptions. For example, when the budget is out, or when there are budgetary um, I would say when there are budgetary news around us, or when we hear about certain changes in the budget, etc., we know that they have actually analyzed certain facts. They have read about certain laws. They have formulated certain ideas, and on the basis of that, they have made this assumption, right? That something has happened and something is happening, or in that manner. So, making generalization on the basis of certain relevant facts, or formulating certain law and theories which are based upon the assumptions. Those assumptions can be based on facts, those assumptions can be based on data, those assumptions can be based on what is available at hand, right? Or what has happened in the past, right? So that is why, because we are making certain generalizations, something that may apply on a broader scale, on a broader level, based upon certain things that have already happened or certain facts that have already incurred, right? We say that this is important to the study of economics. Now, if you remember, I will go back to the slide. I talked about positive signs and normative signs, right? Now, obviously, it is bound to raise a question that what do I mean to imply when I say positive signs and what do I mean to imply when I say normative signs? Now that we have understood why we classify economics as a science, we also need to understand why it is a positive as well as a normative science, or what factors or what underlying concepts are making it a part of the positive science and what underlying factors or concepts are making it a part of the normative science, right? Now, when I talk about positive science, it may not indulge in value judgment. Now, this is a very, very important thing, and I would say it may raise a lot of questions in your mind that what exactly do we mean when we say that it may not indulge in value judgment. Okay, now I will put it in a very simple manner. Now, imagine you are the person who is in charge, or I would say you are the person who is holding the responsibility at your home, right? To plan for the grocery, to allocate the expenses that, the money you would like to spend on buying the grocery or other items that are required daily in your home, right? Now, when such kind of a responsibility is entrusted upon you, obviously there is a pressure on you. Now, what is this pressure that I'm actually talking about? This pressure deals with value judgment, right? Now, what is value judgment? Value judgment is where a person starts to conceptualize everything with respect to value, right? Now, what can be value? Though I had this question for all of you, I will save this question for all of you for the last when I unmute you. My question that to all of you is, what is value, right? Or how do you define value? Now, everybody will have a very different definition of value, and that is why when I said that I have a question for all of you, I mean to say that I would like you to let all of us know that what you understand of value. Okay. Now, it is an assessment where you are taking something as good or bad in terms of your standards or priorities, right? Now, in a very normal way or in a very fluid way, I have told you what value judgment is. But when we talk about economics, right, why is it a positive science? Because you may not always indulge in value judgment, right? Sometimes when you have to make your decisions, you also base it on very relevant factors rather than simply the value judgment. Okay. And the analysis is confined to the cause and effect relationship. Okay. So something like I just gave you an example. So suppose you go to the supermarket because you have to make the grocery purchase for your house for the week. Uh, you start, scrolling through the shelves. Okay. Now, just imagine a situation right now. Maybe the tomatoes are very cheap. You see that the supermarket has a sale and it is giving you tomatoes at a very cheap rate. Now, the normal, if you tell this to me over a call, you just call me and you say, so okay, hi Sonam, the tomatoes are simply 5 rupees a kg here. When I hear it, what would my statement to you be? I would be like, oh, why don't you then buy 3 kgs of it? But would you actually buy 3 kgs of it, right? This will depend on multiple factors. First, are you going to consume are you actually going to consume 3 kgs of tomatoes? Now, it might be possible that in your family you are just a family of two or three, right? And you may actually not need 3 kgs of tomatoes. Second, even if you take a decision to buy it, right, would you be in a position to store them for so long as you may be consuming them? Third, maybe what is the condition of the tomatoes? Are actually 3 kg of good quality tomatoes available in the superstore? Yes or no? So, whatever your questions are, based on the answers, you make a decision. So, you are doing a cause and effect relationship, right? Say, suppose I today want to buy 3 kg, I buy 3 kg. I go to my home and I realize, oh, we have to go for a holiday in the next week, so I'm not available at home for 4 days. And so for the 4 days, there are 4 additional days for which I may need to store those tomatoes. There is no point buying it. Don't buy it. Right. Second, I check, okay, I check, I might be expecting guests in the next week, and that is a great opportunity that tomatoes are cheap and I can buy more of it because, when I have guests, I'll have more consumption of tomatoes then. Great, buy them. Right. So, what am I doing over here? I am doing a cause and effect relationship. I'm doing an analysis on the basis of what my requirement is rather than a value judgment. The value judgment is simple, which says that it is so cheap, why don't you hoard it or buy more of it because it is at lower cost? No, but I will do a cause and effect relationship. Now it states what is and not what ought to be, right? So it will state what is in front of you, not what you may have in the future or what it may be or what might the situation be. It might be possible tomorrow if I come back to the superstore, the tomatoes might get cheaper or they might get costlier. Anything of the two can be possible, right? But I'm not making my decision today on the basis of that. It is what is and what not ought to be. But when we do a discussion, I will give you an example on how this relativity changes from goods to goods. This does not apply universally to all the goods. For example, when we are talking about precious metals, when something like gold, etc., you will see there is a difference, right? And why there is a difference? Because of the human psychology. So just remember that all these are studies, right? All these are what may be, what can be, how it might be, but exactly not what it is, because a very important concept will come into play over here, which is known as human psychology, right? Normative science, right? Now, let me very quickly take you to normative science because we also have the questions to take. Now, normative science relates to finding out and prescribing certain course of action to achieve certain social goals. It focuses on the welfare of the people and how best it can be achieved, and it also focuses on what ought to be in the future context. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Now, normative science is about finding out and prescribing certain course of action. Now, suppose I am sure most of you are reading about, early retirement, long-term financial planning, how can you retire early in your life, etc. So these are certain social goals, right? Now, you may have your own certain social goals, setting up your retirement plan, marriages of your someone in the family, or maybe long-term. You might have a goal to travel across the world, so and so. So you have a number of social goals, and social goals are not restricted. Always remember that you cannot simply list down the social goals. They are very flexible. They are not static. They change from time to time. What goal I might have listed today may not exist in my list maybe 2 years down the line due to a number of factors, right? So just be very clear on that, when you are listing your social goals, they may not be static, they may not be rigid, they are very flexible, they are open, and they may be ever changing. And that is why we say economics is a normative science, because it will, help you in prescribing certain course of action from time to time as you keep on changing your social goals in life. Now, the overall focus of, study of economics is the welfare of the people and what are the best ways to achieve them. So economics will always focus on how how welfare of the people is the central idea, and how most of the goals, or how most of the things can be arranged around it so that you can best achieve what is required, right? It also focuses on what ought to be in the future context. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? So, let us say there are resources that we talk about in economics. Now, in the resource allocation part, I'll also tell you why resource allocation is very important and why resource management is important in economics and why future context is understood over here. So it focuses on what ought to be in the future context, in the sense that if there are resources available to us today, can we simply, just keep on consuming them? Can we consume them, without taking into account that, there may be a scarcity in the future? Or do we totally ignore any future concepts? Or do we totally overlook, the future requirements? If not, how much of it do we keep in the future, right? What is the consumption trend expected to be in the future, etc. So there are, underlying ideas around the future context as well. Okay, now Let us combine these two. Right now, we have seen positive as one part, normative as another part. Now, somebody might question that, okay, you've told me positive, you've told me normative, but why is a managerial or why is economics both positive as well as normative? Right. So let us answer these questions. Now, it deals with the things as they are. A very important thing that we need to understand over here is that economics will deal with the things as they are, right? It will it will not be, talking about something based on assumption, something based on ideas, something based on likes or dislikes. No, it will give you a picture of the things as they are. So, if something has a cost, the cost is very clear. It is not an assumed cost, it's a given cost. And it also tells us what things ought to be, right? What things ought to be is, for example, when you read reports about inflation is expected to rise, the GDP is expected to fall, there might be changes in the oil prices, there might be an upsurge in the demand for X commodity or Y goods, etc. So it also tells us what ought to be based upon what is available today, right? And also very very important thing that is of high relevance to all of us at this point is that it gives you a method. In fact, not not an individual, but I will say it gives all of us method of realizing the economic idea. Now, if you remember in the beginning itself, I told you that everybody's economic idea is different. There are people who are consumption centric. There are people who are saving centric. There are people who are investment centric. There are people who who are more money minded. There are people who are less money minded. There are people who believe more on spending. There are people who believe less in spending. So it is important that each and everybody's economic idea has a clarity in their individual mind. Within a same family, you would see there are people with different economic ideas. So I'll just state an example for quick reference. So maybe within the family, the father might be somebody who's saving centric. He would always say that save money, don't spend additional, don't spend on luxuries, don't spend on branded goods. When a simple T-shirt can serve you the same purpose, why spend on a branded T-shirt? That is fair enough. That is his economic idea. There might be somebody else who might feel that buying cheaper goods at lower price gives you lesser utility. Why? Because they may get dismantled more often. You may have to spend more often on them because of cheaper quality or low value. They might be prone to treading. They might be prone to getting faded earlier. They might not maintain the same. I would say the same the picture that you saw in the first go when you bought them. So a number of things, and so that is why you feel that spending a little more on better quality of goods makes more sense. Again, agreed, not a poor idea. So the only difference over here is that one individual is basing their idea where they are more inclined to spending less on goods and services, and somebody might be spending higher in terms of money value but lesser in terms of the quantity that they are deriving, right? Now, economics studies the evil effects of society and suggests for the removal of them. A very important thing. Why it is important for everyone, or why it is important for economies around the world to have an understanding of, the ideas. Because there are evil effects in the society which may be existing because of how economic systems work. And then also economists will suggest certain ideas for the removal of them. So when you see this X policy, some yojana by the government of India, Pradhan Mantri schemes, president schemes, welfare schemes, so many schemes coming up, these are all economic suggestions, right? Which are aimed at removing the evil effects that money or the concept or idea around money might have on the society. Okay. Next is economics history is the study of economics phenomena over a successive period of time. So we know that economics is something that is not static. It has changed over the years. the ideas, the concepts, the realization, the value systems, the principles, the schemes, the I would say everything around economics is ever evolving, right? Something that began from a simple concept of barter trade today has come to the what was barter in the beginning of trade system today stands at exchange of not only goods and services but even ideas and processes. So there is a cost involved even in ideas, even in the processes, and this cost has got its own realized value in terms of money as in a currency, not as something where a good can be exchanged with respect to another good, which was the barter concept, right? Where people were exchanging one good with respect to another good. So the economic history is the study of economic phenomena over a very successive period. So it began with some concept X, and then it started to, I'm so sorry, yeah. And then it started to propagate. It started to move along. There were changes, there were new ideas, there were newer concepts that started to float. And around those newer concepts, newer theories came into the fore. And these newer theories also led into newer ideas. Newer ideas caused newer problems called for newer solutions, and so on. Then we say economics is the study of welfare. It requires that economy should maximize human satisfaction from the available resources. Okay. Now, this is exactly where I wanted you people to pause and think. Somebody might have unlimited money. Okay, there is no dearth of money. They have an unlimited or a flow. I would why I'm using the word unlimited. By unlimited, I don't mean that it's coming on its own. The sources are much wider than their requirements. That is what I mean to say that, right? So now they may have generational wealth, they may have money enough to satisfy multiple generations for all the goods and services, right? However, do we still say that they'll be able to satisfy every need or every want? The simple answer might be a no. Why? It is because of the concept of scarcity. Okay, always remember the available resources in the society or in the environment are limited or scarce, right? So if I want to say that I want to buy all the water of the earth, will I be able to do that? No, because all the water in the earth is a very scarce commodity, right? So the idea of economics is to study the welfare of the people. How do we say people are wealthy, or when do we say people are happy, or when do we say an economy is a flourished economy or an economy is established economy? That comes from the concept of maximized human satisfaction from whatever the available resources are. So are we able to satisfy ourselves, right, with the available resources that we have? Now, this resource also includes the money resource, which is also scarce. Okay. Now, for most of us, money might be a scarce resource. We want to buy so many things, right? Most of us want to buy so many things. Most of us want to spend on so many luxurious items, maybe services. I would say most of us may want to spend on buying the best of the goods and services, going on the best of the holidays, eating in the best of the restaurants, spending our time not doing a job, but maybe for the activities that we find of leisure, maybe our hobbies and etc. But are we all able to do it? No, because we are always in for some or the other scarcity. Now, this scarcity is where we say is the economic study is focused on. Now, even in the presence of this scarcity, how much of satisfaction or how many of my required goods or services or satisfying items am I able to procure or buy? And this is exactly where the welfare of the people lies. If more number of people fall in the high satisfaction index, we say that economy is more well well established, right? It could also be in quantitative terms, like we study normally. The quantitative terms could be where we say that most number of people have the money that is required to buy the goods and services. Now this is not only with respect to the money which we are talking in terms of buying goods and services, but the basic requirement fulfillment plus what they want to spend their life in happiness. Okay, so all in all, this is a very broad thing. This is not something that we may be able to discuss in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but when you start understanding economics, you will know that how definition of welfare differs from person to person. For everybody, welfare is not only about money. For everybody, welfare is not only about spending that money on things that they like. Again, that is a concept that will have its linking to the concept of human psychology. When we say human behavior is a very diversified kind of a thing, right? So if today I tell you that, okay, maybe having 25 crore rupees in my account will mean that, I have achieved my welfare. Can I say that for everybody? No, it may not be that way. For somebody, even having lesser money in their bank account, but being able to fulfill every requirement to the maximum satisfied level can mean that they are more economically well off than me, right? Because human psychology, right? This is not something which money will talk about. This is something that a human psychology will tell you, right? So up till here, this is exactly where we are classifying economics as science, right? When you're talking about art, by art, what am I trying to imply? Why am I saying that economics is an art? Now, according to T.K. Mehta, knowledge is science, but how you apply that knowledge, the action that you take, right, based on what you know, is exactly where the art is. And this is why economics might be an art. This is how we classify economics as an art. So art tells us how to do things, that is to how to achieve an objective. Now, suppose my objective is to, retire early in my life. Just giving an example. Okay, I want to maybe retire at say 50. I feel 50 might be too late. Okay, I want to retire at 40. Or somebody might want to retire at 30 also, right? Now, this is something that you've thought, but have you achieved it? No. You'll have to take some action to achieve it, right? So what is the action that you're going to take to achieve your objective is exactly where you say that this is an art. How does somebody do it? The action behind achieving a goal or a set, I would say, not a set goal, but an objective, right? So it is the practical application of your theoretical knowledge. So you might have read that, investing X number of amount in X number of years and achieving a fire number or maybe a fire figure will help you, retire early in your life. And by doing that, maybe you will need to do some A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H steps. Now, are you actually going to take each and every step the way it is, told, or the way it is expected, or the way it should fall in sync for you to achieve your goals is very, very important. So, art is the practical application of your theoretical knowledge. It also focuses on what ought to be in the future context, right? So, in the future context, maybe if within the next 5 years, I would want to do my retirement planning, and within the next 5 years, I want to build that corpus which will allow me to retire early, right? Then what are the steps that I ought to take, right? And how do I take those steps? What actions do I implement that those steps fall in sync with each other is where exactly the art lies, right? And that is why, even though with same scientific principle, everybody might not be able to achieve their goals. Why? Because the art, the way they apply the knowledge, the way they take their actions to put into the effect of what they have understood or read about is very, very important. Now, this is, a very, very important thing when we say about the scope of economics. Now, somebody might say that, to what scope or to what depth or to what, I would say gravity can somebody talk in economics, or somebody deal in economics or study in economics. So it is varied. You can talk about economic theory, you can talk about applied economics, or you can talk about descriptive economics. Now, these are the three major branches. you know, in which you can actually economics that's why I said it is something very, very broad, it is not something that somebody can understand overnight, or a discussion within a few minutes can give you a picture of what we are trying to imply. But when you try to break it up, and when you break and understand each and every concept or theory that builds onto the greater picture, you will know that the scope is very, very wide. It could be in an individual's life, it could be an individual's daily decision making, to the extent that it could be into the country's overall economic planning. It could be into the multiple global trade planning scenario, and it could be also for the future global trade planning scenario. So it's if it is talked in the narrow sense, it can be really narrow for an individual. If you talk in the broad sense, it can encompass, you know, an individual, it can encompass a firm, it can encompass an industry, it can encompass a country, it can encompass multiple, countries, and it can go beyond the geographical boundaries, right? So we talk about economic theory, we talk about applied economics, and we talk about the descriptive economics. Now, each of them together build the scope of economics, right? But if we have to talk in a narrower sense, right? If I have to talk for you or for me, right? What is economics to me or what is economics to you, right? We will we see it more from the economical theory and applied economics concept, right? Because this is what I know and this is what I do. So what I know is what theory has given it, and this is what I do is how I have understood it or how I use it, right? When I make my own decisions. Now, let us understand how economics covers a wide area and serves different purposes. Now, Stonier and Hogg have divided the subject matter of economics into three categories, right? Now, let us understand each of these three categories, and I will tell you how you might be, applying it, or how you might be seeing it around yourself. Obviously, the first is economic theory. It is a theoretical part. It contains the economic theories and the tools. It is divided into static and dynamic, and is also known as the economic analysis. Okay. So the theoretical part, which will tell you the theory of money, the wealth of the nations, Adam Smith theory, Keynesian theory, so many theories, right? These were theories that earlier economists found out based on their observations, experiment, behavioral studies, etc. They could make certain generalizations based on that. And it is divided into both static and dynamic, right? Some part of the theory is unchanged. It is the universal applied thing. For example, scarcity of resource. This is a very static thing, right? The resource scarcity will not change overnight. The resources will always remain scarce. The dynamic theory could be, how the human behavior, the way somebody makes a decision around buying a product or service, etc. Right? The next is applied economics, where we attempt to apply the result of the analysis to descriptive economics, that is, your industrial economics, managerial economics, agricultural economics. These are all applied economics, right? Where industries are using the economic theory and making decisions onto what to make, how to make, how much of it to make, who to partner with, etc. Managerial economics, where managers make decisions for their firms or industries based on their economic understanding, agricultural, etc., so on. And next is the descriptive economics, which will talk about relevant facts about a particular economic subject or topic, which is collected for the purpose of the study of the subject. For example, Indian economics, right? The economics of the USA, right? Or economics of certain XYZ country, economics of, say, branded goods and services. So they are very, very descriptive. They go into the depth of certain thing which is very specific. Could be a nation based on geography, could be a goods or services based on the demand, supply, etc. Right? Now, as regards to the scope of economics, no uniformity of views will exist among various authors. Now, when you will read about different authors, right, even in the future discussions that we will have, you will see there is no uniformity, right? Because economics is not something that is very static, or that is something that will stay put or the same throughout. It can change from time to time. It can change from geography to geography. It can change from situation to situation. An example is pandemic. Okay, but there are certain aspects that generally fall into these criteria. The first is demand and its forecasting. The next is the elasticity of demand. The third is production and cost analysis. Next is the capital management. And obviously, finally, it is the profit management, right? So we don't have one uniform view, but we can classify most of these views under any one or more of these five of the concepts. Now, economics will help the business managers to analyze the external environment of the business. However, it does not furnish a body of set principles or any ready-made solutions to the problems, right? Because you cannot apply ready-made problem. Ki this worked for X person, it will work for Y. No, not necessarily, right? Because there is some logic, there is some other situation, or there is some other change that might have existed from person X to person